I never thought that all the spinach that I was eating alongside my steak, or all the peanut butter, or all the almond flour or almond milk could possibly be causing the pain that I was feeling from lipedema. And the more and more I learn about how oxalate affects the tissues in our bodies, the more and more I realize the damage that I had done. Hi, I'm Linda Salant. I'm also known as the Carnitarian. I have been following a carnivore diet, which is inherently a pretty low oxalate diet, for over 10 years now. As a kid, we always ate a ton of potatoes. It was a pretty standard American diet: potatoes with every meal, or pasta with every meal, some kind of starch and vegetable and a meat. And a standard American diet was sort of how I grew up. As I entered puberty and my teenage years and my 20s, the fertility aspect of my health was just never right. I never got a regular period. I was not one of these people that was like undernourished and not eating enough, and that's why you're missing your period. There was something else going on. As a young adult, they say, well, you're just going to go on birth control to manage your cycles. But that's so damaging long term. When you go to a doctor and you say, I'm not feeling so great, I get these headaches, or what's going on with my knee? Why does it hurt? They never discuss what you're eating. They just say, well, you seem kind of slim. It's probably just in your genetics. They ask about the family history. And my family history was such that I had chronic venous insufficiency, arrhythmia, and heart issues, which I was experiencing, joint pain and joint replacements. I really was not given any appropriate guidance as to what a healthy diet should be, other than what we all heard in the 90s and late 80s was just keep it low fat. Don't worry about sugar, just stay active. You'll burn that off. All throughout college, I was very interested in nutrition, and I tried to stay very healthy. I read Prevention Magazine. I tried to do all the good things that we do to try and stay in shape. I wasn't overweight. I wasn't a junk food junkie. I had no sugar addictions, but I was eating a lot of what we would call superfoods: sweet potatoes and spinach like crazy. I was eating a lot of peanut butter, and I was maintaining generally a low-fat, high carbohydrate diet. I was never like a plant-based person intentionally. I followed more of a healthy standard American diet. But when you really break down what a healthy standard American diet is, it's very much plant-based. It was not uncommon for me to have a can of spinach for a snack almost daily. And I studied nutrition. I went to Cornell. It was explained to me that the greatest diet was a low-fat diet, and you wanted to moderate that. Make sure you keep your cholesterol low. Make sure you keep your fat low. This is path to good nutrition. It wasn't discussed that there was anything negative about vegetables. It was more discussed that the vegetables are there to keep you healthy. The fiber is there. All the nutrients are there. And we all should have this goal of eating as many vegetables as possible, and then fill in with some meat. Treat yourself with some dessert every now and then because you deserve it. It's wild. I went low carb and I realized fat is not the enemy, but I kept in all of those superfoods. Spinach was on the side of every steak. Every now and then I was eating sweet potatoes, but oftentimes I was eating peanut butter, a lot of peanut butter after college. Like I would walk down the New York City street with a jar of peanut butter and a spoon. It was absolutely not helpful to me in terms of like body composition. The time when I realized there was something really wrong was after college. I was working in a building on the second floor. And you would think like you're 23 years old, you go in the building, you walk up the stairs to the second floor, you're fine. I would take the elevator up and I would take the elevator down to the second floor, which is like not normal for a 20-something-year-old. You should be able to get up the flight of stairs. But the heaviness in my legs was just such that it was hard to get up the stairs. And the joint pain in my knees were like, it's really hard to go down these stairs because every step was like painful in the knees. And it just was part of normal life. Like I said, it was very normal for people in my family to have joint pain and knee pain. My sister deals with it. My brother deals with it. And we're just sort of like the bad knee family and the heavy legs family. And none of us thought that it was because of our diet. I never thought that all the spinach that I was eating alongside my steak or all the peanut butter or all the almond flour or almond milk could possibly be causing the pain that I was feeling. And that's when I started to see and feel the pain of lipedema. Lipedema in general is an adipofascial disease that mainly affects women, although it does affect some men. There is an overproliferation of collagen production in your body. There is correlation with chronic venous insufficiency and impaired lymphatics as well. So if you are someone who has varicose veins, or if you have an impaired lymphatic system due to surgery or trauma or just hereditary issues like runs in my family, you are absolutely more prone to having lipedema with those issues. What we see with lipedema is increased proliferation of fat cells, and there's this disturbance in the signaling of those fat cells. And so they are very resistant to weight loss. They are not sensitive to the changes in insulin lowering the way that normal fat cells respond to lower insulin. And that is where you see this extreme disproportion in women with lipedema, where they have a very slim torso and really disproportionately large hips. And it's because we've got this almost unlimited ability to grow more fat cells. The first time that I look back and realize, wow, I had lipedema and I didn't even realize that I did, was back in high school. I would put on a skirt in high school. I was a cheerleader and my legs just didn't look like the other cheerleaders' legs. Like they were puffy and the inside of my knee had this like really weird shape. And my kneecap was like not visible. My ankles were sort of not bony like a normal slim girl's ankles. They were kind of like tree trunk legs. And so I wasn't overweight, but I definitely had a lipedema sort of brewing. It didn't make sense to me why I would have this excess fat in my legs. And with pregnancy and hormonal shifts, things got really bad. When I was pregnant with my first child, I gained so much weight, especially in the bottom. It was really very strange. I was oddly proportioned. It really threw me for a loop, and it took a very long time for that size to reduce. But I remember seeing stage 1 pictures and thinking, oh yeah, like that's pretty much what I look like. Like this is it. And the bruising and the sensitivity, the pain associated with that, the tired, heavy legs. But then when you flip the page and you see what stage 2 looks like and stage 3 and stage 4, your heart just sinks. And then you read that there is no cure for this. And you read that ultimately you're either going to end up on the liposuction table or in a wheelchair. It's so disheartening. Back in 2015, after I'd had my second son and I was looking to get back into keto, I was on Facebook looking for all sorts of keto recipes, which are oftentimes very low carb, vegetable heavy. Spinach and almonds are like main ingredients in these keto dishes. And I came across the carnivore forum, which was zeroing in on health, and all of the people there doing a carnivore diet, which is inherently a low oxalate diet. When I jumped into carnivore, I kept in spices because at that time, it was the kind of thing where people weren't so dogmatic about carnivore. They were like, just eat meat. Don't complicate it. If you like to keep, your food spicy, like that's not going to harm you. What we're really concerned about is that you eat enough meat, you eat the meat you like. And that's what I did for a lot of years. So there was salami and pepperoni, and there was, hot sauce on my wings. And it made carnivore very sustainable for me to be able to have different flavors and keep all of my favorite spicy foods into carnivore. Inadvertently, with that approach, I mitigated oxalate clearing without realizing it. What happens now is people who jump into a carnivore diet are often told, plants are trying to kill you, so eliminate them completely. And that includes spices. But what happens is when you completely eliminate oxalate after living a very high oxalate life, which You may have been living because you were plant-based, because you were keto, because you were vegan or vegetarian, or just because you were having a standard American diet. If you could eliminate oxalate completely, you start clearing oxalate at such a rate that it becomes very painful. It wasn't until I switched to a carnivore diet and got exposed to the teachings of Sally Norton where I realized that I had lowered my oxalate and that some of the improvements that I was seeing may have been due to the lowering of oxalate. It's very lucky for people who find Sally's work either through carnivore or through, ex-vegan pathways or ex-vegetarian pathways so that they can understand that a lot of times it's not that they need to reduce calories. It's not that maybe they haven't eaten enough meat. It's that they've been overloading their system with these toxic superfoods. And the more and more I learn about how oxalate affects the tissues in our bodies, the more and more I realize the damage that I had done before going carnivore. Because of my chronic venous insufficiency around 14 years ago, I needed to get a special surgery. So the surgery I had with the vein specialist was called RF ablation, and that's when they go into your greater saphenous vein, your lower saphenous vein. They close those veins so that you don't have this excess pressure on smaller veins. And when I went back to the vein specialist 7 years after my original vein surgery for chronic venous insufficiency, and they did an ultrasound, he had told me that I'd be back in 2 years for another surgery because that's just how it goes. But he looked at my legs and said, your veins are great. There's nothing we need to do. I don't have the leaky vessels that I used to have, causing lymphatic stagnation and then causing my lymphatic system to become overwhelmed. It's nice now in my late 40s to feel like I'm in the best shape of my life, but it would have been fantastic if I could have taken advantage of my 20s and really felt great instead of having to have felt the anxiety and depression and the pain of joint issues and headaches and lipedema and interstitial cystitis. And I wish that knowledge would be given to the young adults out there and the parents who are teaching their children what an appropriate diet is. If all of this is coming from our food, it's such a simple fix.